Okay. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for attending. At this time, I'd like to call to order the regular reorganization meeting for the Mount Carmel Area School District. At this time, please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America,
to the republic
For which it
stand
stands,
one nation, God,
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
please be seated. Roll call.
Mr. Brecker,
Here.
Mr. Brett,
Yes.
Mr. Gonzalo,
Here.
Mrs. James is present. Mrs. Latour,
Here.
Mr. Mazzatesta,
Here.
Mr. Muldowney,
Here.
Mr. Zach,
Here,
Mr. Zanella,
Here.
all present.
Moving on to recognition of guests. I don't believe we have anybody in the audience that wishes to speak to any agenda items. Moving on next to the action items. A motion is needed to elect a temporary chairperson. I'd like to nominate Attorney Greco.
Motion.
Motion by Mr. Zanella,
I'll second that.
second by Mrs. James. Roll call. Roll call vote. Or voice? Voice vote,
Voice.
all in favor?
Aye.
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 Those
Aye.
opposed? Ayes have it.
Moving on to.
Sorry, can you hear me now?
yes.
Yes.
Sorry.
Yep, we got you.
Moving on, a motion or nominations are needed to appoint someone as president of the school board for a one-year term.
This is Mr. Brett. I'd like to nominate Mr. Brecker.
I'll second that.
I didn't hear who made the motion.
Looks like Mr. Brett did,
Okay.
Yes.
and that was seconded by Mr. Mazzatesta.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, but who's the nomination for board president?
Mr. Brecker.
Mr. Brecker,
Mr.
Okay, I'm
Brecker
sorry.
is.
Okay, there's a motion and a second nominating Mr. Brecker. Are there any other nominations? Hearing none, then a roll call.
Mr. Brecker,
Yes.
Mr. Brett,
Yes.
Mr. Gonzalo,
Yes.
Mrs. James Welch, yes. Mrs. Latour,
Yes.
Mr. Mazzatesta,
Yes.
Mr. Muldowney,
Yes.
Mr. Zach. Is Mr. Zach on? Okay, I don't hear him. Mr. Zanella,
Yes.
motion passes.
Can you hear me now?
Yes,
I would vote yes.
okay, thank you. Motion passes 9-0.
Mr. Brecker, please take over.
Okay, thank you, folks. I appreciate your support. Under action item C, a motion is needed to appoint a vice president of the school board for a one-year term. And if I'm allowed, I'd like to nominate Mr. Jim Britt.
Second.
Sounds like we have a motion and a second. Is there a roll call?
Yes,
Yes.
Are there any other nominations? Okay, none heard. Would you like a roll call, Mr. Becker?
Yes, thank you, Donna, for clarifying the other nominations.
Mr. Britt,
Yes.
Mr. Gonzalo,
Yes.
Mrs. James Felches, Mrs. Latour,
Yes.
Mr. Mazzatesta,
Yes, sir.
Mr. Muldowney,
Yes.
Mr. Zach.
Yes.
Mr.
Yes.
Zanella,
Yes.
and Mr. Becker.
Yes.
Motion passes 9-0.
Moving on to action item D. A motion is needed to approve the third Thursday of each month at 7 p.m. in the school district boardroom as the regular board meeting time and dates for the 2021 board meetings. Each meeting will be preceded by a work session at 6:30 p.m.
Motion, Jose.
Second,
Who was the second by?
Mr. Zach.
Okay, thank you. Do you want a roll call on that?
Yes, please.
Thank you. Mr. Gonzalo,
Yes.
Mrs. James Felches, Mrs. Latour,
Yes.
Mr. Mazzatesta,
Yes.
Mr. Muldowney,
Yes.
Mr. Zach,
Yes.
Mr. Zanella,
Yes.
Mr. Becker,
Yes.
Mr. Britt.
Yes.
Motion passes 9-0.
excuse me, Mr. President. Now would also be the time if we were going to schedule the work sessions the week before, so we could advertise those at the same time.
Need a motion.
We would need a motion.
I'll motion that. This is Mr. Britt.
Second, Latour.
Roll call, please.
So the work sessions would be the second Thursday of the month, beginning at what time, Mr. Cheddar?
6 p.m.
Okay, at 6 p.m.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Becker,
Yes.
Mr. Britt,
Yes.
Mr. Gonzalo,
Yes.
Mrs. James Felches, Mrs. Latour,
Yes.
Mr. Mazzatesta,
Yes.
Mr. Muldowney,
Yes.
Mr. Zach,
Yes.
Mr. Zanella.
Yes.
What, would that be letter H? What letter would that be for the motion? Would it be like,
Probably H.
okay. Motion passes 9-0.
Thank you. Moving on to action item E, a motion is needed to approve facsimile signatures for all officers during the 2021 calendar year.
Motion.
Who made the motion?
Mr. Muldowney.
Okay, thank you. I'll second it.
Roll call, please.
Mrs. Latour,
Yes.
Mr. Mazzatesta,
Yes.
Mr. Muldowney,
Yes.
Mr. Zach,
Yes.
Mr. Zanella,
Yes.
Mr. Becker,
Yes.
Mr. Britt,
Yes.
Mr. Gonzalo,
Yes.
and Mrs. James Felches. Motion passes 9-0.
Action item F, a motion is needed to elect 2 members of the board to serve on the Northumberland County Career and Technology Center Board. Mr. Muldowney and Mrs. James currently serve as Career and Technology Center Board members.
I'm okay with remaining on that board.
Bob, do you?
Well,
I'll make a motion to appoint Mr. Meldowney and Mrs. James to the Career Board.
Second, Latour.
Thank you. And, okay. Are you ready for a roll call, Mr. Becker?
Yes, thank you.
Mr. Britt?
Yes.
Mr. Gonzalo?
Yes.
Mrs. James Felch, yes. Mrs. Latour?
Yes.
Mr. Mazzatesta?
Yes.
Mr. Muldowney?
Yes.
Mr. Zach?
Yes.
Mr. Zanella?
yes,
And Mr. Becker?
Yes.
Motion passes 9-0.
Action item G, a motion is needed to appoint a school board member as the district's PSBA representative. Mrs. James is the current representative.
I'm willing to remain in that position unless someone else would like it.
In that case, I'll make the motion for Mrs. James,
I'll second it.
Mr. Muldowney and Mr. Gonzalo.
Thank you.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Britt?
Yes.
Mr. Gonzalo?
Yes.
Mrs. James Felch, yes. Mrs. Latour?
Yes.
Mr. Mazzatesta?
Yes.
Mr. Muldowney?
Yes.
Mr. Zach?
Yes.
Mr. Zanella?
yes,
And Mr. Becker?
Yes. At this point, I'd like to entertain a motion to adjourn this meeting and then subsequently move on to the special meeting immediately thereafter.
Motion to adjourn, Latour.
Second, Jose.
7:13. Seconded by Mr. Gonzalo. I guess everyone in favor of that?
Aye.
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 Motion passes to adjourn 9-0. Are we staying on here then? Or do we have to exit and go into a different meeting?
Nope, same meeting, Mrs. James. So we could just get started with the special meeting as soon as we're ready.
Perfect. I don't feel like fighting with anything. All right, I'll get that. Let me find this one now.
Just let me know when you're ready, Donna.
I'm ready.
Okay, is everybody else ready for the most part?
Yep.
Okay. I'd like to call to order a special meeting of the Mount Carmel Area School District here tonight on December 2nd, 2020. Roll call, please.
Mr. Becker,
Yes, here.
Mr. Brett.
Here.
Mr. Gonzalo,
Here.
Mrs. James is here. Mrs. Latour,
Here.
Mr. Mazzatesta,
Here.
Mr. Muldowney,
Here.
Mr. Zach,
Here.
and Mr. Zanella.
Here.
Everyone's present.
Thank you. And can we have a motion to approve the minutes of the November 19th, 2020 regular board meeting?
Motion, Mr. Zach.
Zach,
Second, Latour.
thank you.
I believe that's a voice vote.
The voice vote. Everybody,
aye,
Aye.
Aye.
motion passes.
Moving on to the next item, is there any guests wishing to speak to the listed agenda items? If so, please state your name and address, and I suppose, Gary, you could let us know if there's anybody on.
There are no questions or comments at this time.
Thank you. Moving on to new business items. A motion is needed to approve new business items 1 through 4 as listed.
Motion Muldowney.
Second, Jose.
Roll call, please, Mrs. James.
Sure. Mr. Gonzalo,
Yes.
Mrs. James Felches, Mrs. Latour,
yes,
Mr. Mazzatesta,
Yes.
Mr. Muldowney,
Yes.
Mr. Zach,
Yes.
Mr. Zanella,
yes,
Mr. Becker,
Yes.
and Mr. Brett.
yes,
Motion passes 9-0.
Excuse me, Mr. President, this is Attorney Greco. I believe we are going to have a special meeting now on December 17th. So we should make a motion to authorize the advertisement of that.
Okay.
That would be
that
new
under-
business item number 5.
Under new business?
Yes,
Okay, so it'll be under new business item number 5. I'd like to entertain a motion for a special meeting to be held on December 17th, 2020.
beginning
Make a
at,
motion.
motion, Mr. Brett.
I'm sorry, Mr. Greco, beginning at 6 PM, I believe.
is that correct, Mr. Cheddar?
Yeah, 6 o'clock.
Do we have a motion?
I'll make the motion, Muldowney.
I'll second that.
Roll call, please.
No. Yes.
Mr. Becker,
Yes.
Mr. Brett,
Yes,
Mr. Gonzalo,
Yes.
Mrs. James Felches, Mrs. Latour,
yes,
Mr. Mazzatesta,
Yes.
Mr. Muldowney,
Yes.
Mr. Zach,
Yes.
Mr. Zanella.
yes,
Motion passes 9-0.
Moving on to personnel items. A motion is needed to approve item 1 as listed.
Motion, Jose.
I'll second that.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Mazzatesta,
Yes.
Mr. Muldowney,
Yes.
Mr. Zach,
Yes.
Mr. Zanella,
yes,
Mr. Becker,
Yes.
Mr. Brett,
yes,
Mr. Gonzalo,
Yes.
Mrs. James Felches, Mrs. Latour.
yes,
Motion passes 9-0.
And before we move on to public comments and questions, I believe Mr. Cheddar had wanted to share a PowerPoint tonight.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Brecker. We'll only take a few minutes. Good evening, Mount Carmel Area Learning Community. Just wanted to give a quick superintendent update before we conclude our special meeting here tonight. We hope everyone had a great Thanksgiving break with your families and wanted to thank our entire learning community for their hard work and support in our first few days back from school yesterday during our virtual instruction week. At this time, our plan is to return to full in-person instruction on Monday, December 7th for all students. Again, this is our plan, but as our learning community has learned through the last few months, things can change at a moment's notice. But again, our plan is for a full in-person instruction to restart on Monday, December 7th. Tonight, our school district also signed the PD and Pennsylvania Department of Health attestation form. We will follow the guidelines set forth that will determine the instructional model based on positive cases within our school district. With signing this form, we will also continue to follow all masking protocols during normal school hours, and we will also follow the masking order during all athletic competitions. Finally, our school district understands the difficulties with the non-consistent of going back and forth between in-person and virtual instruction may cause, but please understand that we are making all decisions based with the safety of your children and our entire staff at the forefront. And a final reminder that if any of our families are in need of childcare for any future virtual instruction days, please reach out to Joanne Sleenham of the Greater Susquehanna Valley United Way at 570-988-0993. We would also like to thank the Susquehanna Valley United Way for their continued support. Just so our community is aware, and I'm sure they are, the United Way has donated computers, hotspots, and PPE equipment to our school district, and we truly appreciate their continued support of our school. Finally, again, as we prepare to again return on Monday, December 7th, the unpredictable nature of this pandemic we hopefully see the light at the end of the tunnel. But again, we all must do our part to mitigate the spread of COVID-19. Again, we must consistently wear masks. We must continue to be socially distant and practice frequent washing of hands and other sanitizing efforts. Also, it is vitally important to stay home if sick or exhibiting any COVID-19 symptoms. It is also vitally important for our parents to continue those morning daily screenings of their children before sending their son or daughter to school. Again, a reminder to our learning community, we will get through this pandemic together. And at this time, back to Mr. Brecker.
Thank you, Mr. Cheddar, and we appreciate the update. And were there any other any principals or maintenance or athletic or special education updates, or was that it for tonight?
I believe at this time, Mr. Brecker, that is all we had.
Okay, so we will move on to public comments and questions. Are we seeing any, Gary?
We have none at this time.
Okay, thank you. And before I move on to entertaining a motion for adjournment, just know, in addition to the December 17th meeting we just established, the next regular board meeting is January 21st, 2021 at 7 p.m. So can we have a motion for adjournment?
Motion.
I'll make the motion. Did you second that, Cheryl?
Yes, second. Sorry, Donna.
That's okay. I think we both spoke at the same time. So I made the motion and Mrs. Latour made this second. That's a voice vote.
Aye.
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 Motion to adjourn passes 9-0.
Thank you all. Enjoy the
Thank you,
holiday
everyone.
season.
Good night.
Good night.